Welcome back to the show, Nasser Arrabyee, a friend of the show. It's been a couple of years since we've had you on. There's a lot of news coming out of Yemen, so I won't delay us. People should go and listen to our previous episodes to get a sense of what we've been talking about. Of course, we're talking about the Saudi-led war on Yemen since 2015 and its origins, its background, its nature, what it signifies. Go check out those episodes, and I've done other episodes on Yemen too. So, but in the meantime, Nasser, welcome back, and would you please give us an update on everything that's happening? Is the war really over?
Thank you very much for having me. And for the situation here in Yemen, it's 1 year truce, and it's holding very well. And as a matter of fact, it was 6 months truce, and 6 months a truce without truce. And this is also a good indication for you and your audience. 6 months a truce and 6 months a truce without truce. So it's a 1 year truce without any fighting in any place, without any aerial bombings, without any missiles or drones going to Saudi Arabia, without anything. It's okay. It's very fine, and it's very quiet now. And hope is very high to end this war altogether.
There's a lot of questions I had at the beginning. I mean, I've been unsure how to feel about Saudi Arabia's pretty dramatic turn in recent weeks towards China and the de-escalation, obviously, in Yemen, and what seems to be an honest rejection of U.S. hegemony, or at least sincere. I haven't been sure how to feel about all of that, because it's Saudi Arabia. These aren't exactly the most noble actors in the world. So my question is, can you really trust the Saudis and throughout all of this to hold to their deals? Because there have been truces before. What's different now?
This is good. This is a good question. What is different now is Saudi Arabia is 180 degree opposite. It's turning completely to the diplomacy, because maybe it realized that this is what it needs, this is what it can do. So all the indications on the ground and tell us that Saudi Arabia wants to end it and wants to return to its diplomacy, because it's Saudi Arabia, with its diplomacy and its money, it can do anything. But by war, 8 years proved that it can't do anything. So everything. Saudi Arabia now tells us that it is Saudi Arabia who wants to end this war more than Houthis, more than the Yemeni side, because Saudi Arabia has its huge investment, its huge projects, and it wants to secure its country. And the most important thing for Saudi Arabia is the security. And of course, Saudi Arabia now seems to be very sure that it is okay and it is good with Houthis, because it's only Houthi who will or who can secure Saudi Arabia. And it's been 6 months now for Saudi Arabia and Houthis talking in Oman and in some other places. And now it seems it's time to end this war. But it doesn't mean that if Houthis and Saudi Arabia agreed, everyone has agreed. Of course, this is the problem that it needs to wait and see, because Houthi and Saudi Arabia might have reached an agreement, but to what extent it will be okay for the others, this is a question that is still unanswered.
I feel like that the way what you're meaning, another way of saying what you just said is, this was never just a Saudi war, right? That this was a international war against Yemen, that Saudi Arabia was the primary actor. I mean, the next question is, what about the other actors? Like the UAE is still controlling Socotra Island, is it not? Like, what happens to Socotra in all of this?
Well, this is one of the biggest obstacles for UAE. UAE has its own different things, the different strategies and different tactics and different goals here in Yemen. But also, I am still saying and optimistic that Saudi Arabia is the big player, and Saudi Arabia is the one who has the big interests in Yemen. So it can do a lot of things to convince and to pressure UAE or any other parties, because the other parties, I mean, the so-called Yemeni internationally recognized government, with all its factions and its groups, they are in Riyadh. All of them are in Riyadh, and Saudi Arabia can convince them by hook or by crook. So it's not a big deal for Saudi Arabia to convince them, because it looks now to its interest, and it can do a lot of things to go forward with ending this war altogether and securing its borders, because securing its borders is the most important thing, and this is what it has been talking about with Houthis for the last 6 months.
So I guess that leads the next question. The so-called government of Yemen, the internationally recognized government, it's Mansour Hadi, right? Fadi or Hadi? I want to say Fadi.
He's no longer there. He is no longer there. Hadi is no
Oh,
longer there. There is a
there's a new
council now.
guy.
There is a new guy. Yes, new guy, Rashad Al Alimi, who's the
Oh,
chairman of the leadership, the political leadership council, the presidential leadership council, made of 7 persons representing all the factions, all the factions from the anti-Houthi alliance, or anti-Houthi camp.
so then the question is, what government will be accepted? I mean, Ansar Allah or the Houthis, they will the West recognize their sovereignty over the part of Yemen that they control, or what does Ansar Allah government look like on the international level?
There is still, because we've been expecting to announce an agreement, permanent ceasefire at the end of Ramadan, but they didn't do it because United States in particular didn't want this to happen this quickly, because it would mean a lot, a victory to Houthis more than any other one, especially in terms of paying the salaries of the public servants, of the public sector servants, military and security and civil. So United States didn't want this to happen, because it would mean a lot. It would mean a lot to Iran, as they think, and it would mean a lot to Houthis, and they want to make a little bit balance. But I think what's going to happen is what Saudi Arabia and Houthis agreed in their bilateral negotiations. in Oman, and this would also happen in the way the main two want, the Houthis and Saudis.
I mean, maybe the story, if we can kind of look at a more global view of the lessons of this war, of this assault on Yemen, this global assault on Yemen, or international assault, is that, you know, one of the, you know, the way we talk about is, I'm guilty of this too, and it's understandable, is that we talk about a kind of David versus Goliath. You know, like, you had this huge Saudi military machine that is billion-dollar animal, hundreds of billions of dollars. They unlimited amount of resources, and they're fueled by the most, of course, because they go shopping at the most powerful country in the world, militarily speaking, the US. So everybody thought on paper that this would be over in a week, that they would and they use the same language that the Americans used. Even I remember they said Saudi-led intervention in Yemen. So it was a carbon copy, that they thought that they would be in Sana'a in like 3 weeks, the way the Americans were in Baghdad in 3 weeks, and they would have their own government set up, and they would just solve this Houthi problem like just like everything else. You know, but here we are, 2023, 8 years later. I mean, Yemen, and you know, who's still there? Who's still there is, you know, it's, I mean, it was the same actors in Saudi Arabia were there too. However, although not really, I think Saudi Arabia has changed a lot too since that time, way more than Yemen politically, I would say. Well, I guess Salah disappeared. Well, Salah died is a different story, but I would say Saudi Arabia had underwent far more radical changes politically than Yemen did during this time.
Well, you're right. You're right. For Houthis, Houthi now is much more stronger than he was 8 years ago, and Saudi Arabia is now completely opposite than it was in terms of politics and um, everything it wants. The international arena, the global arena is completely different with what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, and also in China. So I think a lot of things are completely different than 8 years ago.
To keep going on this question, it feels like, you know, yes, there was David and Goliath struggle, but the level of the level of fear in the Saudi beast, I feel like, in the Saudi beast of war, that is to say, like, I feel that something happened pretty radically in 2019 in the Aramco attack, and something changed in the calculation of the Saudis. Do you feel that that's a correct assessment, or was
that was the beginning of the end? Yes, that strike that knocked out half of the Saudi oil production was the most serious step that made Saudis reconsider what's happening in Yemen.
Yeah, I mean, back then we were talking about, like, who was, like, it seemed, because there was a lot of press around it, and there was, but I remember after a few days it kind of died down, and the Saudis managed to, I feel, massage the news, because they have the money to do so, and say, oh, it was just a little bit of an attack, you know, we lost a little bit, but we're getting back going again. But like, Saudi Arabia lost like half of its production because of like a few like low level drones, so that all of somebody proved to them that it was proven to them that all of our investments, all of the billions we spend on expensive American missile defense, couldn't stop this from happening, and maybe we're playing with fire.
Exactly. And the Houthis, in a way, Houthis proved to Saudis that it's them who did it, directly or indirectly. I mean, with sort of help from Iran or from anyone, but they proved by the latest strike on Jeddah and the oil in Jeddah, and that huge smoke rising to the sky in front of the millions of people. So it was a good proof that Houthis could do something, could damage and could disrupt the vital Saudis projects.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think about this way. I mean, the hubris and the arrogance of Saudi Arabia thinking that they can just destroy this country and overwhelm this political movement, Ansar Allah, the Houthis, that had taken very popular. I mean, it's interesting. We talk about the 2010s, and oftentimes people in West Asia, the region, North Africa too, we talk about that and we think, oh, Arab Spring, and oftentimes the story of Yemen and the Arab Spring is not really told, because the Arab Spring for Yemen, was punished in 2015 with a war, right? It wasn't celebrated.
Exactly.
It wasn't celebrated the way that other Arab Springs supposedly. And I don't even like using the term Arab Spring. I feel that but whatever, it's the term we have to use. But like ultimately, there was a democratic or a popular movement that challenged this guy Saleh and the sort of and also the larger hegemony of the region. And so yeah, and then they were punished with this insane violent war, and then siege and starvation campaign and bombing campaign, and it still didn't make the Yemenis break. I mean, it's hard to say this, without sounding so corny, but I mean, Yemenis are like some of the most heroic, like this is a heroic story of triumphing over like a real Goliath. And I don't feel that Yemenis get any of the fraction of like the attention and like credit and like study that they deserve. Sorry, that wasn't a question. I just as editorializing. And is the world ready to accept like a popular Ansar Allah movement that is aligned with Iran, or is it going to be is the sovereignty of Ansar Allah going to be limited to what it controls militarily now? Like what's the next step for geographic Yemen?
There are a lot of scenarios for this. The first scenario is unified Yemen, and the second scenario is two Yemens or three Yemens. But this is something that is rejected and refused by a lot of Yemenis. And Saudi Arabia, of course, and the UAE look only at their interests, and they don't care about what is good for Yemen. They just care for what is good for themselves. But what is in our interest, in Yemeni's interest, is that they are not unified also. Saudis and Emiratis are not unified. They are in different directions. They have divergent goals and divergent roads they are going down, because of this, Yemenis would, if war is over and the hostilities are completely stopped, and I think Yemenis would manage to do what is right for them. Unification and the unified Yemen is the number one thing that all Yemenis want. And this, of course, would mean difficulties and problems to be solved, and pleasing some groups, and trying to repair the the damages and the things that made these problems and the grievances in the south and also in the north. So, but the 8 years, of war taught Yemenis a lot of things and a lot of lessons, and I think they would be able to solve the problems and to keep Yemen unified, and to also establish a state that bring all Yemenis together, and with the democratic process and elections and all these things that the modern state need.
That's my kind of follow-up question. Now the task is to rebuild the country, so not just politically, but economically and physically, right? A lot of destruction and resources. Do you think the West will allow Yemen to get the goods that it needs, or which is to say, is the Saudi blockade over?
Well, now it's United States is not that big in the region, in the Middle East. It is not as it was, but it would, of course, it is now. It is trying to say or to do what can tell others that it is still there, and it would do a lot of things, like dictating how this government should be, how Houthis, or how significant and how big Houthi should be, and to what extent it would be in the government. All these calculations would mean nothing if they are far from the ground, because ground now, the things on the ground are completely different now, because Houthis and his allies, of course, the other parties, are in different positions, and they want to make Yemen the way they want. It doesn't mean that Houthis will be the only one, because this can't happen at all. But the state it is going to be established would not be the one that United States want to be, or even Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia would mean more, would matter, or would care most only for its security, and its security, of course, its security, the security of Saudi Arabia would be a very important thing if it would also consider the new ground and the new reality in Yemen. And I think this is what's going to happen. Security for Saudi Arabia, and a good state and independent state, free state for Yemen to some extent. Free and independent Yemeni state in return for a secure Saudi Arabia, and I think this can be possible because of the new reality, as I told you, and the new developments in the region and in the world.
Nasser, this is my last question. I won't keep you much longer. How do you feel about all of this? I mean, 8 years of war, trying to tell the world, working as a journalist. I remember one time we spoke shortly afterwards, they bombed the journalists union building. I remember that. Like, that's one story that I remember, but you must have so many memories, trauma. Like, how do you, I mean, this is a very personal question, I'm sorry, but how do you look back? Like, how do you go forward from now? Like, what do you feel? What would you say to the outside world after experiencing like 8 years of war? Like, how would you tell people?
Yes, I would say this. I would say this simply. Yemenis, the vast majority of Yemenis are fed up. They are sick and tired and fed up of the war. So they want to end it as soon as possible. They want to get back to life, to normal life. Um, and especially now, after 1 year of this truce, they also they they have a lot of hope and a lot of optimism to return to that life, to the normal life. So Yemenis, the majority of Yemenis don't care about who's going to rule, but how they are going to live, how they will they will send their children to school, and how they are going to have their food and their secure cities and their secure houses. So this is the most important thing that people now want, because war is war, and war is atrocities and crimes and very bad things.
Thank you very much, Nasser, for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for coming to the show and giving us your time over the years and telling us about the situation. And thank you for all your work. So